You're after something. Is it revenge? Money? Or is it something else?
Hello, welcome to Film Rant. I don't think it will come as a shock if I said that barely anybody was in my screening for this movie on release day. I've not really encountered anybody that's been hyped for it. What with the change of directors halfway through and reshoots and other bumps in its production, I can't say I had much hope either. The trailers were a bit bleh, but it's Star Wars, baby, of course I'm going to go and see it. Plus I knew this movie would be better than Rogue One because, you know, it actually has a story and likeable characters. I wasn't expecting greatness though, but was I pleasantly surprised? Well, to answer that I'll be doing a Kessel Run into spoiler territory, so beware before continuing on. The big question on everybody's mind is whether Alden is a decent Han Solo. Well, Harrison Ford liked him, and Mr. Ford? I agree. They really didn't show him too much in the marketing, which gave me a concern that it was because they thought he wasn't quite right and wanted to hide it. Apparently Lucasfilm were worried about his performance so much that they hired an acting coach for him, although how true that is remains to be seen. It turns out that they just didn't show him much in the trailers to actually make him fresh when watching the movie. I don't think he particularly looks the part other than the hair and clothes. I can't see him as a young Han Solo in the face department, but damn is his delivery accurate. Alden gives a faithful portrayal of Ford's version of the character while also adding a bit of his own charm. There was some points in the movie where I genuinely thought, wow, that really sounded like Harrison Ford. His mannerisms, such as the way he fires the blaster, which is iconic in itself, were very well done too. His chemistry with Chewie is just as good as Ford's too. They were a joy to watch. I was skeptical of Alden's casting, but damn it, Lucasfilm made the right call. I don't really think you can call this guy a scruffy looking Nerf odor though. I mean...
He's absolutely magnificent. I bet his poop smells like sandalwood.
I don't think many people had questions about this casting, but Donald Glover as Lando is scarily good. I mean, holy fuck. It's like Lucasfilm made a time machine and brought young Billy D. Williams into 2018. Donald's performance is ridiculously accurate. The writing for him too was excellent. I feel Lando is a little underexplored in the original trilogy because the main characters take up so much screen time, so it was nice to see more of his character in this movie, even if he doesn't come in until halfway through. I love Donald Glover, but I just want him to see him fail at like one thing, just one. He's a talented fucking writer, he's a talented fucking stand-up comic, he's a talented fucking comedy actor, he's a talented fucking movie actor, he's a talented fucking rap artist, he's a talented fucking soul singer, he's a talented fucking director, and I'm sure I'll find out he's a talented fucking voiceover artist when The Lion King comes out. Fuck this guy and his fucking talent. I love you, Donald. Without doubt, the best performance that was accurate to the original character though was Chewbacca. Whew. Lucasfilm pulled that difficult task off really well. Apparently Paul Bettany was cast as a different character in the Phil Lord Christopher Miller version of the movie, but Ron Howard changed him into the background villain in his cut, and Mr. Bettany really works as a mafia-style villain. As a Brit, it pains me to say it, but damn, we Brits make good villains. Don't get me wrong, the character itself is very cliched. He wouldn't have looked out of place in The Godfather. He's that gangster that acts all welcoming and pleasant, but you know he's a violent psychopath underneath and you're just waiting for him to attack someone. He's a bit like Jeff Goldblum's character in Thor Ragnarok, just without the subtle comedy that Jeff brings to that character. Some people might complain that Bettany was a fairly weak villain as he's killed rather easily at the end and doesn't really do much in the movie. In fact, I think he's only in 2 rooms throughout his whole time in the movie. I totally see those criticisms and I can agree, but I think he was fine as a background villain. The main story is the heist and the characters working together, not doing the job for Paul Bettany. I enjoyed Woody Harrelson's character, but I think he missed the mark a little. I get the impression in the original cut he was meant to be some kind of outlaw mentor for Han to learn all of his devious tricks off, but we never really saw any of that in the movie itself. Again, he's a bit cliched, the guy that tells you not to trust nobody, then betrays you himself and says, "I told you so." That actually happens, by the way. He's alright as a side character, but I would have liked to see him take on that shooter role a bit more. I wanted to see Han learn and develop as a character. Emilia Clarke's character changes pretty radically in such a short space of time. I don't think it's ever made clear how much time has passed between the time where she and Han is split up to when they are reunited, but the difference in her character is black and white. In the first few scenes, she seems madly in love with Han and wants nothing but to get off the planet she's on with Han and go and live somewhere with him. By the time he sees her again, she's this kind of untrustworthy, snidey lady who acts like she's never truly been interested in Han at all. At first, I thought she was keeping her distance because she was kind of tied to Paul Bettany, but the ending told me different. So yeah, I just found the character to be very uneven and maybe even poorly written. Credit to Emilia Clarke though, she managed to portray both sides of her character well. She did an excellent job portraying this character who is on the good guy's side for most of the movie, but you know there's something just a bit off about her. It can be hard to do that without losing subtlety, so props to her for a good performance. I enjoyed L3, Lando's angry droid. I think I might have grown to dislike her had she been in the movie more, but what I got of her I really enjoyed. She was a fun, feisty droid, a little like a more advanced HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic. I certainly liked her a lot more than K2SO from Rogue One because, well, she was actually funny, and ultimately a nice character. There was certainly some surprises when it comes to the story of Solo. Firstly, I was surprised to see Han join the Empire at the start of the movie. I never saw Han doing that, although I guess he's kind of doing it without really knowing who they are or what they're all about. He just wants to fly and make money. I guess when Han is a smuggler for all sorts of gangsters and dark people, joining the Empire wouldn't be the most shocking thing he's done. Ultimately, he's a good guy though, which Emilia Clarke says later in the movie. I'm happy with Han joining the Empire actually. I would have never thought it, but I really like that aspect of his character. In the original trilogy, Han doesn't believe in the Jedi or Sith or anything like that, so I guess the Empire is just another army to him. Another aspect of his story I was surprised at was that he's madly in love with a girl, and the whole story is basically about him getting enough money so he and she can run away and live together in a far corner of the galaxy. Based on Ford's portrayal in the trilogy, I always had Han pinned as a bit of a womanizer. I think Princess Leia does too, which is why she rejects most of his advances. I expected Alden's Han to be a chip off the old block, a cocky bad boy who goes through women quicker than a spicy vindaloo. I like the story of Han doing everything for him and his girl, but at the same time I didn't like it because I didn't think it fit the character that well. Maybe I'm misunderstanding his character a bit, but it just didn't add up for me. I didn't like it, I didn't agree with it, but I do accept it. So what did you want to see in a Han Solo movie? Han learning to become an awesome pilot? Han learning to talk his way out of dire situations with gangsters and other nefarious types? Han living the life of Riley as an outlaw bad boy? Well, we don't really get any of that. There's lots mentioned in this movie that I'd wished we'd actually seen. When Han wants to join Woody Harrelson, he says he was kicked out of the Imperial Flight Academy, the reason he signed up to the Empire, for having a mind of his own. I don't know whether he was ever in the Flight Academy, as it kind of comes across like a lie, but if he was, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see Han learning to fly a TIE fighter and learning how to navigate space battles. He also mentions he learned to drive by street racing with his friend Needles. I wanted to see that. Obviously we have Needles played by Vin Diesel and do Fast and the Furious Star Wars edition. But yeah, I wanted to see Han as a 14 or 15 year old kid driving around like a maniac on the streets growing up. That's where he learns his key driving skills. He can learn his pilot skills in the Empire and then learn how to talk his way out of trouble by watching Woody Harrelson do it with Paul Bettany. I don't mind the story we got in all honesty, but I can't help but think it's more of a Han Solo adventure film than a Han Solo origin film. Maybe that has to do with the change in directors. Maybe Phil Lord and Chris Miller had those early Han scenes, but Ron Howard cut them for a more conventional adventure style movie. I guess we'll never know. For years and years I've wanted to know what the Kessel Run was, and whether or not a parsec was a unit of distance or time. In real life it's distance, but in Star Wars it could be fucking anything. I got an answer to one of those and half an answer to the other one. A parsec is indeed a unit of distance. It takes 20 parsecs on average to do a Kessel Run, but Han takes a shortcut and does it in 12, rounding down. Which I guess he takes further down in the original trilogy as he says less than 12 parsecs. The Kessel Run itself was a little bit unclear. I think it's the process of taking unrefined hyperfuel and getting it refined, but to do so you have to fly through an area of space that is inhabited by large creatures, has low visibility, and asteroids and planets crashing into each other everywhere. It's basically the space equivalent to central London, just with less dirt. I could be totally wrong with that, but that's what I got from the movie. I kind of wanted the Kessel Run to just be a time-trialled race, Kessel being the name of the track. It's a bit simple, but it fits the law. You have to get from A to B via any means possible. Usually it takes around 20 parsecs, but Han can do it in 12 with Falcon. That would be cool. I was also surprised they didn't make a big deal of the time. I guess it would be a little bit fan-servicey, but I would have liked to have a scene where Lando looks at the map to see which route Han took and is like, Han, this can't be true, you did it in 12 parsecs. It actually says 11.98, which Han would always claim. They then argue a bit for the rest of the movie about rounding up or whatever, but then Han settles on just saying less than 12 parsecs to honour his friend. This would also connect to the original trilogy quite nicely. I like the Kessel Run sequence even if I'm still not 100% sure what it is, but I also think it could have been simpler or just better in some way. For years and years I've also wanted to know how Han met Chewie. I got that answer, and it was relatively simple. Han is thrown into a pit, much like Luke is with a Rancor, except instead of a Rancor, Han gets Chewie. He communicates with him and frees him from the Empire's captivity. Turns out between episodes 3 and 4, the Empire took every Wookiee off Kashyyyk and placed them in captivity or slavery. Chewie's had a bit of a rough time, so it was good to see Han as his kind of saviour. Maybe Chewie owes him a life debt, which is why he goes everywhere with him. I don't even know if Wookiee life debts are canon. I've played too much of Knights of the Old Republic recently. I think this way of Han and Chewie meeting was good. It was simple, it was believable, and I totally get why they would become lifelong friends from it. However, I did want to see a bigger gelling phase between them. They immediately get on like a house on fire, which was fun to see, but I wanted a period where they would just not work well together. Han has a big ego, Chewie is very picky about things. I wanted to see them clash and bicker. They argue a lot in the trilogy and in The Force Awakens, so I wanted to see that taken to the next level for the early stages of their relationship. There's a pretty big reveal in Solo which I can guarantee will be spoiled within the first few days of release. I'm going to spoil it here, so beware because this one is pretty huge. Early on in the movie, Paul Bettany mentions he works for somebody. I knew it would be somebody pretty important, so I tried to think who it could possibly be. I wouldn't have got it in a million tries because it's fucking Darth Maul. Remember that dude who got chopped in half in episode 1, was made legend by the Star Wars fanbase even though he's kind of a shit villain? He's only cool because he looks cool and has an awesome lightsaber, but come on, let's face it, he's a canny shit villain. Anyway, in the Clone Wars series, which I believe is still canon, Darth Maul is revived and has these weird robotic legs. If the Darth Maul we get in the future is this same Darth Maul, then I'm all for it, but since you don't see his lower half, it's unclear as to which version of Darth Maul this is. I'd love it if this Darth Maul was set up for the Kenobi Solo movie and he takes precedence as the villain in that, but as for this Solo movie, I'm not sure we really needed to see him. I was actually enjoying this movie as it was the first to have little to no reference to the Rebels or Imperials except the small segments at the beginning and the end. It's mostly a movie about Han and a gangster, which I loved. It was like a Marvel Netflix show versus the Avengers. The big trilogies are the big crossover style movies like Avengers, and Solo is more like a ground level TV series. When they brought Darth Maul into it, it kind of left a sour taste. It felt a bit forced. It was like bringing out The Rock at a shit pay-per-view for a cheap pop from the crowd. If the Kenobi movie or following Solo movies explain how Maul was revived and it's revealed he's operating some kind of gang cartel as a rogue Sith Lord, then I'm fully on board with him. If he's brought back cheaply because people loved him the same way those idiots love Boba Fett, then I'll hate him. He was great in episode 1 for his looks and fighting style, but let's leave it there. He's got no character whatsoever. I also have to question how the Emperor and Vader wouldn't know he's alive, but I guess that can be answered in future sequels. As you may have guessed, I've not watched the Clone Wars TV show. From a technical standpoint, the pacing is a little wild. The movie doesn't flow too well and there's not a great deal of plot. It kind of just jumps from place to place. Sometimes it's hard to keep up. It's not that it's necessarily complicated, it just moves along very quickly. It hinders the characters too. Han makes a few rash moves during a train heist and Woody Harrelson's girlfriend dies. That isn't Han's fault, but then Han loses the payload they were stealing. Harrelson then twats Han square in the face, which is understandable given he's just lost his girlfriend and didn't even get what they came for because of Han losing it. But about 46 seconds later, he's completely over it and apologises to Han for punching him in the face. I was sat there amazed at how quick this dude copes with emotional trauma. The twat gets over losing his girlfriend quicker than Han pulled the trigger on Greedo. Hashtag Han shot first. The movie is also annoyingly dark. Not in a tone sort of way, in a literal I can't see shit because you haven't turned the fucking lights on dark. Throughout much of the first half of the movie I could barely see a thing. I don't know if it was the screen I was in or whatever, but there's just never lights on characters' faces in this movie. They're always backlit and it makes it really hard to see what's going on, especially if they're running or fighting. My friends also had the same problem, so it's not just my blind ass not being able to see anything. Did Ron Howard reshoot the movie so we never see Han's face and just replace it with Harrison Ford's? It seems like he tried his best. Add some fucking lighting, man. Overall, Solo was a perfectly enjoyable adventure movie and a fairly decent Star Wars movie. I was confused as to why this was being released in May as opposed to Christmas like its predecessors, but I get it now. It's a summer family blockbuster. It's got fun characters, a relatively straightforward and no-nonsense plot, and a lovable lead who's kind of not what I expected young Han Solo to be like. Even still, I liked him. I like the writing in this movie, and even if it does have a very weird reveal and some characters who seem a bit conflicted in what they're meant to be, it's an enjoyable 2 hours that doesn't do a lot wrong. If you're a long-time Star Wars fan, you'll get some answers to parts of Han's backstory, but you won't see anything that really adds to his origin story. If you're a casual, you'll see an entertaining heist movie with fun characters. Solo isn't a great movie, but it's also a movie that doesn't do a lot wrong and isn't a boring piece of shit like the other Star Wars story movie. I really hate Rogue One, man. Solo, a Star Wars story, gets 4 frames out of 5. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.